Oh, welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In our video for today, we are going to add the next 20 creature cards with mana values of 7 into our Momir Vig Cube. Greetings and salutations to the MTG BC. You are the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to another installment in our ongoing Momir Vig Cube series. Today we've got 20 more creature cards going into the cube, this time with CMCs of 7. If you are unfamiliar with the goal or purpose of this series, or you just need a refresher, you can go skulking around in the description below for a link to MTG Burgeoning's introduction to the Momir Vig Cube. And while you're down there skulking away, you can also click the link to Cube Cobra, where you can see the entire contents of the cube as it stands right now. We are inching closer and closer to our 1,500 card capacity. So let's get right down to the next 20, and we're going to begin with an oldie but a goodie. We're going all the way back to the days of Exodus, which is nearly 25 years ago, for Pit Spawn. We've got a 6/4 beast with first strike, and during our upkeep, we must pay 2 black mana or we sacrifice Pit Spawn. Right off the bat, we're going to highlight one of the necessities in the Momir Vig Cube. Make sure you diversify your basic land library. You want to have those 2 black mana available, or you wasted 7 mana summoning a creature that will do absolutely nothing for us. Alright, and if Pit Spawn damages any creature, that creature is exiled. So if an opponent is going to block down on Pit Spawn's taking him with them. Pit Spawn is going to take that creature down with him. Alright, from mono black to mono green, Plated Crusher, 7/6 trample hexproof. So we have the evasion, we have some protection. In Momir Vig, there are no instants or sorceries, so the hexproof will be important in case there are any creatures that have activated abilities or ETB abilities. Hexproof says, no, I don't think so. Next up, from mono black to mono green, and now it's mono blue. Here we have Primarch Escapee. Wow, that's hard to read in the old school border. Through the lens of the camera, that is not easy to see. I mean, a good thing it's not a white card, because that would be nearly impossible. All right, so we have Primarch Escapee, a 4/4 flyer. That is all. Cycling is not going to work because this comes straight from the cube, and it's never in our hand. This highlights one of the other themes that we see in the Momir Vig Cube, is that not every creature in every level of the tier, and not every level of the Momir Vig Cube in each tier, is going to be uber helpful or uber powerful. And if you are unfortunate enough to summon this to your side of the battlefield for 7 mana, ooh, you're only getting a 4/4 flyer, and some bad times ahead. All right, from mono black to mono green to mono blue, now it's mono white. We have the Quarry Colossus, a 5/6 that when it ETBs, we put target creature into its owner's library just beneath the top X cards of that library, where X is the number of planes we control. So, as long as we have a plane on our side of the battlefield, what we're going to, in effect, do is exile target creature, because each creature that's summoned from the Momir Vig Cube is a token copy of itself, and when a token leaves the battlefield, it ceases to exist. So we get a 5/6 with some beefiness, no evasion, but it does have the important interactive removal spell, which in this format, it's as rare as winter roses, folks. All right, so from mono black to mono green to mono blue to mono white to mono blue. All right, we have the Quicksilver Gargantuan, a 7/7 shapeshifter that when it ETBs, it does so as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's still 7/7. Can you imagine what you could copy with this creature coming down? An important ETB ability, maybe some ridiculous evasion, maybe, the Plated Crusher or some kind of flying. This could end up becoming one of the most valuable creatures in the 7 spot of the entire cube. You're getting your 7/7 and you're picking whatever creature has the best set of abilities. When it hits our side of the battlefield, oh baby, Quicksilver Gargantuan could end up being a quick path to victory. All right, next up, we're going back to mono green. We have Quilled Slagworm, an 8/8. That is all. There's no evasion, there's no abilities. It's just a straight beater at 8/8. All right, back to mono white. We have Radiant Sarah Archangel. It's a 6/4 flyer, and then we may tap another untapped creature we control with flying, and then Radiant Sarah Archangel gains protection from the color of our choice until end of turn. So, for the investment of 7 mana, we're getting total power toughness 10 with some evasion. As long as we are fortunate enough to have some additional flyers on our side of the battlefield, maybe they're 1/1s, maybe they're 1/2s, maybe they're little chumpies, maybe they're Thopters. Either way, if we can use other flyers that are smaller than Radiant, give her protection from the colors that may be able to block her through flying or reach, we can send Radiant into combat very well protected, and it's only going to take 4 swings to kill an opponent because, in Momir Vig, each player begins with 24 life. All right, next up, a creature that could end up becoming one of the most powerful creatures in all of the entirety of this 1,500 card cube. And of course it would be a mono green beater. It's the Rampaging Brontodon. It's a 7/7 trampler that whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each land we control. So if we just go along in a normal regular game and we cast this guy on curve and minimally untap during our next turn and send it into combat, we got a 14/14 trampler for 7. That should end the game very quickly outside of any of our opponents having Death Touchers or some form of interaction through an activated ability. All right, we're going to go on a little bit of a mono green string here, and next we have Ravenous Gigantotherium. That's right, it's Ravenous Gigantotherium. How ravenous is he? Well, we're about to find out because it has Devour 3. Do you remember the Devour mechanic back from Alara, the Alara block? Devour 3. When this creature ETBs, we may sacrifice any number of creatures, and then if we do, this creature ETBs with 3 times that many +1/+1 counters on it. So if we have a bunch of chump blocking, just taking up space creatures on the battlefield, let's get rid of them and make sure that we can make this as big and as beefy as possible, because when Ravenous Gigantotherium ETBs, it will also deal X damage divided as we choose among up to X target creatures where X is its power. Each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power to Ravenous Gigantotherium. So as long as we get enough creatures sacrificed to put enough +1/+1 counters on this guy, we could seriously do some damage to our opponent's armies, enough so that our beast stays on the battlefield while so many of their creatures hit the graveyard. This could be considered one of the removal spells that we have here in the Momir Vig Cube, Removal on a Stick. All right, next up as our mono green string continues and we reach the halfway point of this video, we have Regal Force, a 5/5 no evasion, but when it ETBs, we draw a card for each green creature we control. Now, of course, due to the random nature of what Momir Vig is, we have no guarantee that we'll have any green creatures on our side of the battlefield outside of Regal Force. So at a bare minimum, the floor of this card is a 5/5 draw a card when it comes into play. However, if the stars do align and the magic gods shine down upon us, we could put a lot of extra cards into our hand, and cards at this point in the game in a round of Momir Vig could become the difference between winning and losing, because each time we summon a creature from the Momir Vig Cube, we must discard a card from our hand. The only cards in our hands are lands, and we need those lands on our side of the battlefield to generate the mana needed to activate our visionary avatar. So Regal Force could help to put more cards into our hand, which should result in more creatures on our side of the battlefield. All right, we're going back to mono white here, and it's another flyer, it's another angel, it's the Resolute Archangel, a 4/4 flyer that when it enters the battlefield, if our life total is less than our starting life total, it becomes equal to our starting life total. So if we cast this chick on curve, turn 7, it's reasonable to believe that we would be less than 24 life at the time that we get Resolute Archangel. So, for the purposes of Momir Vig, this reads your starting life total becomes 24. Not bad for a 4/4 flyer that can still swing in and do some evasion-laden combat damage. All right, next up, we're going first multicolored creature of this video. It is the Risen Sanctuary, an 8/8 Vigilant Elemental. There is no other evasion here. However, with that 8/8 paired with the Vigilance, we should be able to confidently send this into combat, and the Vigilance allows it to remain untapped to await our opponent's crackback. So a great offensive threat and a very, very great defensive deterrent. All right, next up we have Rockcaster Platoon. We have a Rhino Soldier that's 5/7. We can pay 4 and a green mana, and it deals 2 damage to each creature with flying and each player. Very, very rare is it to have a white card that will actually hurt us as well as our opponents, but here we have Rockcaster Platoon, but also keep in mind that green mana is necessary to activate this ability, so make sure you have those forests in your basic land library, MTG BC. Also notice we do not have to tap this Rhino Soldier in order to activate its direct damage ability. We can cycle in as much mana as we have, and we can activate it multiple times in our turn as long as we've got the green mana necessary and at least mana in increments of 5. A 5/7 could do a lot of good in the defensive side of the game, and we can rid the skies of any pesky little flyers, as well as dealing direct damage to each player. We got to keep an eye on that, because if our life total is so much higher than our opponent's life total, it may make sense to just jam all available mana into the Rockcaster Platoon and see those life totals head south as fast as possible. All right, we're next up with creature number 14. It's our first colorless creature of this video. It is Roving Keep. We've got a 5/7 wall with Defender. How would you like to jam 7 mana into your Momir Vig Simic Visionary Avatar and end up getting a 5/7 wall? Well, let's keep reading. We can jam an additional 7 mana into this to give it +2/+0 and trample until end of turn, and then it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. It's a steep price to pay, particularly if you look at the fact that then you would have invested 14 total mana into a 7/7 trampler that can attack just once. Again, this helps to highlight another one of the features of the Momir Vig Cube that we've already discussed in this video. Not every creature is going to be coveted on your side or our side of the battlefield. Reaching the 3/4 mark of this video, we're going back to mono black, and it is a flyer. It is the Rune-Scarred Demon, a 6/6 flyer that when it ETBs, we Demonic Tutor. We get to search our library for any card and put it into our hand. This ability is neutered somewhat because, let's face it, the only card we're going to get from our library is a basic land. But that also could be very valuable because perhaps we summoned a creature from the cube and we don't have the right colored mana to activate its ability. Rune-Scarred Demon will come into play and ensure that we search our library and get that land. Next up, we're going back to mono blue, and this time it is Sage of the Beyond, a 5/5 flying spirit giant. Spells we cast from anywhere other than our hand cost 2 less to cast. So you know what that means. For the purposes of Momir Vig, we are getting a 2 generic mana discount on everything we summon through our cube. Now, unfortunately, the foretell ability is not going to work in this instance because we are randomly summoning a copy of this from the Momir Vig Cube, so it will never be in our hand as a way in which to foretell it. If we are fortunate enough to get this onto our side of the battlefield, we should do very well, particularly if we have any abilities that require mana on creatures we already control, because we can jam just 6 mana into our avatar and then summon something from the 8 tier while still having a boatload of mana to use on the abilities of those other creatures. And we have a 5/5 flyer to boot. All right, next up, back to mono green, we have the Sandstep Mastodon. It's a 5/5 reaching elephant that when it ETBs, we bolster 5. All right, we're going back to the cons block. Do you remember the bolster mechanic? That means we choose a creature with the least toughness among creatures we control, and we put 5 +1/+1 counters on it. There is a +1/+1 counter theme woven into this cube, and if you're fortunate enough to get the Sandstep Mastodon, that should do nothing but help to strengthen that synergy. All right, we're down to 3 more creatures. Next up, it is another colorless creature. It is the Sandstone Oracle, a 4/4 flying sphinx that when it ETBs, we choose an opponent. If that player has more cards in hand than we do, we draw cards equal to the difference. This ability may be a bit nerfed because at this point in the game, cards in hand may be a rarity. However, if there is an opponent that does have more cards than us, we're going to have as many cards as they will if this ETB is under our control. All right, we're down to 2. Next up is mono blue, and we're going to go back to another Kraken. We haven't done a Kraken yet this video. We did in the last video. So this time we've got Scourge of Fleets. It's a 6/6, and when it enters the battlefield under our control, we return each creature our opponent's control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands we control. So let's examine this card here for a moment, because this could be absolutely devastating under the right circumstances. If we have a battlefield that is inundated with islands or snow-covered islands or both, and the Scourge of Fleets hits our side of the field, if we can bounce as many of those creatures to our opponent's hands as possible, remember, these are token copies of the creature summoned from the cube, and when a token leaves the battlefield, it ceases to exist. So this could be as close to a mass removal spell as we're going to get in this format, but you gotta make sure you have those islands on our side of the battlefield. You just gotta have them in that library. You just gotta do it, baby. You gotta diversify. All right, finally, creature number 20, bringing this video to a close. We're going back to mono white, and of course, let's finish things off with an angel. We have Seraph of the Masses. The convoke ability is not going to help us here because we're summoning this randomly from the Momir Vig Cube. So we have a flyer that has base power and toughness equal to the number of creatures we control. Again, this is going to be very, very battlefield dependent. And unfortunately, if you're jamming 7 mana into your avatar, hoping for a savior to hit your side of the battlefield with very, very few creatures on our side of the battlefield, Seraph of the Masses is going to leave you very, very disappointed. All right, folks, that is it. 20 more creature cards with CMCs of 7 going right into our Momir Vig Cube. Let me know your favorites in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.